Right, good afternoon, nudists and textiles. That's what nudists call people who choose to wear clothes, by the way. Textiles. My name's Danny Whittaker. This is my own worst enemy, mental health podcast. I'll tell you what, I'm with a nudist today. It's, 29 degrees here in sunny Manchester. 85 degrees, that is, for our American friends. It's ridiculous. I hate this weather. Can't handle it. Makes me moody. I can walk around seeing my arse all the time. Oh, by the way, another little colloquialism there. Seeing your arse, for those that don't know, means, well, being in a bad mood. It's a northern thing. I don't do myself any favours. I'm not one of these people that... I can't wear shorts. I don't like shorts. Nothing wrong with my legs or anything like that. I just feel... I feel peculiar when I wear them. So yeah, I only ever wear jeans, which is fine usually in England most of the time. But on days like this, it's not good. And to make matters worse, okay, that for the past like few months, I've been very lax on my diet, put a few pounds on. So I've only had one pair of jeans that actually still fits me. And, yeah, I've been wearing them that much that I've kind of worn a hole in the crotch area. And, because I'm kind of like, yeah, a bit podgy and busting out of them, every time I make any sort of sudden movements, you just hear a little, and, you know, that's another half centimetre added to the gaping wound between my legs. And, so yeah, all in all, basically, today I'm hot, moody, sweaty, and my bollocks are hanging out. So, I'm having one of those days. So I think a bit of shopping's in order. Another thing I don't like doing. Speaking of man bits, actually quite a good segue that. Today, 19th of June, just so happens to be International Father's Mental Health Day. And our topic of discussion for this episode is postnatal depression in men. My guest today is Mark Williams. Mark is the founder of Fathers Reaching Out and co-founder of said International Father's Mental Health Day. After experiencing a traumatic labour during the birth of his son, Ethan, in 2004, both Mark and his wife, Michelle, struggled with crippling anxiety and postnatal depression. After Michelle recovered, Mark continued on in a downward spiral, which eventually culminated in suicidal ideation and a complete nervous breakdown. After finally seeking help, Mark has since made a full recovery and now makes it his life's mission to raise awareness of perinatal mental health issues in fathers. Mark has spoken around the world at over 150 conferences and events and has written about fathers' mental health in several publications. He's appeared on numerous TV news outlets and has also appeared in television documentaries concerning mental health, including Channel 5's My Secret Past. And in 2012, he was awarded Local Hero at the Pride of Britain Awards and Inspirational Father of the Year. You can follow Mark on Twitter. He's Mark Williams FMH. That's at Mark Williams FMH, the FMH standing for Father's Mental Health. As usual, if you'd like to comment on this episode, you can do so by going to myownworstenemy.org/podcast. And, well, actually, I think I'll leave it there. Said everything I need to say. Starting to get a bit soggy. So, please enjoy my conversation with Mark Williams. Right, okay, Mark Williams, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining me.
Thanks, Danny. Thank you.
Okay, so, bit of an experimental episode this for me today. So far, I've only interviewed like clinicians and academic psychologists and the like, but I've been wanting to branch out and do something from, well, people with lived experience. So far, every episode's been people with objective experience of various mental health disorders. But I want to add to that and provide the listeners something that's a lot more relatable and less cold hard facts, if you like. So you're helping me kind of lose my virginity with that today, I guess you could say. So, okay, what's been interesting about preparing for this episode is it's a lot different kind of studying a person than it is a topic. It's very easy to prepare for talking about depression, things like that, because you go into the stats and all the factual stuff and reading studies. But yeah, doing my research on you, I've been you do a lot of media, you've been on places like the BBC, ITV, talking about your experiences, but all very short, bite-sized stuff. And
Yeah, right.
yeah, the thing I'd like to do today is really kind of dig down into the details of your experience, because I think it's going to be in those details that the listeners find something to relate to. So,
Absolutely.
so let's jump in now and start with. I'll tell you what. Let's start with you give the listeners a kind of a brief introduction as to who you are, what you do, why you do it, and we'll unpack it from there.
Yeah, I'm International Fathers Mental Health Day founder. I founded the day last year, but now I'm actually joint founder with Dr. Daniel Singley from the States, California. And we're launching it. The reason why we're launching it, we're looking more branching out, not just perinatal mental health, but father's mental health in general. So it could be loads of aspects. It could be father come home stressed from work, that's going to impact his child, perinatal, birth trauma, post-natal depression in men, anxiety, everything. We're looking at, I think after 6 years now, I'm after speaking to, would say at least over 2,000 fathers in different capacities through my old charity or Facebook, email, phone calls. I realise that is a bigger area that needs to be talked about, really, rather than just perinatal mental health, So, yeah, and like you just mentioned, obviously being on TV, radio, I've been lucky to travel around the world now. Well, self-funded by my wife, I'll be honest with you. She's absolutely fantastic, because my main job is actually working with the NHS with dementia projects as well now. That's maybe. I do a lot of public speaking and training. I'm working with Dr. Jane Hanley tomorrow, as it happens, on training health visitors and midwives. But my mostly, my paid work is different to what I eventually want to do, is be more fathers, around fathers' mental health in general, really.
Yeah, and so, but the impetus for all this, the inspiration was that you struggled with postnatal depression, paternal postnatal depression. Is that right?
Yeah, well, I didn't know. Obviously, the pregnancy was fine. Nothing wrong with the pregnancy. It was in the labour ward, was when, after 22 hours labour, I was very anxious. I wanted the baby to come out. My wife was very anxious, obviously, as well. But what happened was the doctors came rushing in, and, no facial expressions, they tone of voice, said, Mr. Williams, we need to get the baby out. Your wife's got an emergency C-section. We need to get down to theatre. And it was the first time I actually ever had a panic attack. Never had a panic attack in my life before. I was 30 years of age, because I honestly thought my wife was going to die and the baby was going to die. And I think a lot of it stemmed from there, when I didn't get this overwhelming feeling of love for my son at that time, because I was just happy that both my wife and the baby were alive. I didn't get this, as society says, that, you can have butterfly, birds singing, you can have this overwhelming feeling of love. I didn't get it. I'd be honest, I didn't. Obviously, that grew, and which I'll talk about later on. But what happened after that was my wife went on to have severe postnatal depression, really, to the point where she should have had a mother and baby unit. Not because she had perinatal psychosis, postpartum psychosis. It's because she wasn't safe. She wasn't safe, She should have had a proper unit, And, I had to give up work. I had to look after her, my wife. Seeing somebody going for an illness is hard enough, but I didn't know nothing about depression then. I didn't know what postnatal depression was. I was, it was a lot bigger stigma then, and postnatal depression, people saying, oh, how can anyone get depressed? It's a happy time. So eventually then, obviously giving up work, there was money worries coming in, I had a new mortgage to pay. And, I couldn't go to work. I loved my work. I was, and the social side of it. So I was actually stuck in a house now. And obviously my mental health was starting to deteriorate then as well,
Right. Okay. Right. So that's the brief summary, and I want to really dig down into this now. So you said you'd never had a panic attack or anything like that before. Have you had? I mean, go back as far as you feel like going back. Was there anything in the past that maybe formed a foundation for this later on?
I think the closest I've had some sort of anxiety, I think I had a lot low mood, nothing like the depression that first year. I was having suicidal thoughts around about the 4 or 5 month mark. My personality totally changed. I was just totally numb, I think, at that time. But looking back in schooling, I was brought up in school up at Valleys, different schooling in the 80s than it is now, I like to think. And I had a lot of low self-esteem, I'll be honest with you. I don't know. I'm still learning about myself now. But I think low self-esteem I had, if anything, definitely was. And I've had it up to a point I'm still, now today, people say, oh yeah, you're traveling around the world and doing all this writing and all this different things. But even when you work with professionals and doctors and professors now, I even think, am I good enough? So
yeah. What was the content of it though? What was the self-talk as a kid that kind of fueled that?
Yeah, well, I was unfortunately, one or two teachers, said I would never get a job. Williams, you leave school with nothing. And Danny, to be honest, I was from the age of 10, 13, I had my own window cleaning business. I had my own paper round from 10. I was earning money, So that started to make me think about authority then. And think, hang on, this teacher's telling me that I've got a job and I'm useless. Then, I've already got, window cleaning around and so I was a young kid. But I think it was, I think I was lucky enough to meet a gentleman, really. Stan Norris. He was a youth club. I run a youth club as well, voluntary. My wife does and my mother. And it was him that actually said at 8 years of age, Mark, you can do anything. If you put your mind for it, you can do anything. And I went on to be a British champion, in the youth club. So it balanced out. I think when I wasn't academic in school, or I think it was the way I was taught as well. I wasn't interested in the subject. See, Danny, I couldn't get stimulation or anything from these subjects. I was so focused in sport, I'm not just blowing my own, but I was very good at sport. But unfortunately, when I look back now after the diagnosis of having ADHD, I totally relate to my childhood and how I was very impulsive and a lot of these behaviours that when I read the book about ADHD, I was like, oh my gosh, that is me. That was me. So I think, I was diagnosed with ADHD at 40 years of age.
Wow. Okay. What was it about? So this guy, when he said, when he came along and told you that you could do anything if you put your mind to it, looking back, what was it about that? Why did that stick for you? Or what was it about that guy that made that stick for you?
I think I wasn't just in school. I had speech therapy in school. I was put in special classes. I was told to go and clean a cupboard. So you'd have because I was very much with interest in the subject. I would look out the window. And I wouldn't concentrate. So back then you'd have a cane, you'd have a clip across the ear. I get picked up at my sideboards. And it was totally different schooling then. But when you got this gentleman comes along and he says, Mark, you can do this. And I got really good parents, but I'm from a mining community and we very much, my destiny was to work underground. My father wanted me to be a miner, So it wasn't, I might be going off the subject here, I think, but I think when somebody's telling you can do a lot better than somebody else is telling you, I started to believe him and I took it on board and he was very positive. I looked up to Stan and still, he was my mentor. I think, and I honestly believe now looking back, if it wasn't for him, I don't know where I'd be now, Danny. I wouldn't, I'll be honest with you, because after I left the youth club, a lot of my trouble started after the youth club. And so I left school, obviously at 15 years of age, no qualifications. I ended up in a factory then. And then after leaving the youth club, very much drink, you're talking to, the rave scene and Ibiza and all that stuff and what comes with that. The drugs, which I am really talked about, if I'm honest with you. Amphetamines, so obviously, it goes into other things, smoking dope, and so 7 years. Then I was replacing that high of winning something. Then I was I needed that sort of reward. I don't know, reward system, what do you call it? But I think it was the only thing that kept my mind from stopping racing as well. I had all these ideas. I've always got ideas going on in my head, and I'm very creative in that sense. And so yeah, for 7 years after that, then I was just totally off it. I was totally off it, going Glastonbury and and places like that, and Ibiza. And so yeah, I think maybe that had an impact, if anything, on obviously the drugs, alcohol, maybe. I was lucky enough to meet my wife at 23 then, so I had a different direction then,
Well, that's it. That was the next thing I was gonna say is, the one great power that women have over men is the ability to civilize us and make us want to be better men, to to impress them and to make them fall in love with us ultimately. So yeah, well, let's explore that a little bit. Tell me a bit more about how it's Michelle, your wife Michelle. Right. Yeah, tell me how you guys met, and what did you have to do to win her over? All those things.
Yeah, my wife's from a similar background. She's from a very people say it's deprived area. I don't find it deprived. We've got a lot of community spirit in where we're from. She's from a council estate over the Rhondda, and I'm from another valley over here. And it was instant. She was actually doing a degree in business studies, and I met about 10 months before. I'd just finished with a relationship, and in a local town in Bridgend, and so I met her then, and then I said goodbye, and then I went on holidays with the boys around about 10 months later, and after I come back, the boys said, "Oh, come over this place, it's a really good place, and yeah, okay, I'll come over." And as it happens, the first person I met was Michelle, so it just, just went from there. She didn't recognize me or nothing, so she must be more drunk than me, if I'm honest with you. But I just think something clicked, I think the first couple of months, obviously you're just seeing each other, but yeah, she's just fantastic, she's really changed me. And I went on to change my job then, I went to Tenerife. That's the thing about what I know about my behaviour. I'm very impulsive. I don't think about things. I just do it, and I went to work with these in Tenerife when I found out they were gangsters, and didn't last long, but I got into sales then.
Whoa! What was we doing? What was we doing for the Tenerife gangsters first?
Yeah. Well, I just had to get out of the factory, and then this job came up, and go and work in Tenerife, time shares and stuff like that. So I ended up going out to Tenerife, and but it got me into sales when I come back. And so somebody said, "Mark, you're a good talker. You should get back into sales. So you should go into sales." But unfortunately, I'd rather come home and lose my kneecaps, because at the end of the day, it was a really, it was a scary. It was scary, but I think it got me out of the factory. And then when I found in sales, then I thought, oh my gosh, the amount of money I was earning in sales then. So I was learning about the motivation side of, all these motivation speakers, and I was just fascinated. And all of a sudden then, where I wasn't stimulated by education in school, I was learning. I loved mental health. I loved the psychology, and then what I know now, I love mental health, and that's why I just take everything. It's something like a sponge. I can take it all in. I don't know what it is, and I think the first book I read was Chicken Soup for the Soul, and that just totally blew me in, and it got me the sales, and obviously then I had an even better lifestyle, and I was went from earning what I did to 4 or 5 times each weekend. But the most important thing, I've never been money orientated as such, so I was lucky enough to go into the voluntary sector then around this time, and started working youth work then as well.
So how long? So you guys met when you were 23. How long before you got married?
Well, I was 23. Michelle was 21. And we were together for 6 years. So we went traveling around Australia, Asia. I went traveling around Europe, different places. We've done all the stuff we wanted to. And we bought a house, nice little house. And the next step was to get married, and we got married in Cyprus. Fantastic. And next time was, well, it was all planned. Everything was planned up to the point of having children then.
Yeah, so, well, that's, yeah, so it sounds like everything's going perfectly well. You've got a decent job, got a decent wife, you're getting married, relationship's good, you've done travelling, you're kind of getting back on your feet.
Oh, Danny, yeah. Honestly, I was paying double my mortgage. I would have been mortgage free within 7 years if I carried on going. At that time, I would have definitely mortgage free. Everything was going really well up to that point.
Yeah, so I suppose that the perfect circumstances into which to bring a child. So was that decision just kind of the next logical step of of the process that you were in? Things are going well, and it just seemed like the natural thing to do. Or have you always wanted kids? How did that decision come about? Because it's a big decision.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, I was kind of 28, 29 when that time end. So everything was in place, and Michelle wanted the child as well. She we wanted two children. She's always said she was happy with one, and everything was totally planned. It was totally planned up to that point. Then and like I said, the pregnancy was fine. Nothing wrong with the pregnancy.
Right. So we get to, like you say, pregnancy's gone well. Michelle goes into labour. This is where things start to go wrong to an extent. So she needed an emergency C-section, you said?
Yeah. What happened was, after about 22 hours labour, it was I was getting really anxious. I just, be honest with you, after the first 3-4 hours, I was, getting more anxious as the time went on. I just wanted this baby out, and I was looking at my wife's eyes, and she was getting tired because up to that point, I think we went into the hospital around about 8 o'clock in the evening. So she was getting more tired, and it was 22 hours labour. I remember the doctors at this point coming in. We're rushing in, as I say, it was 3 of them coming in, no facial expressions on their face. They tone a voice, and they said, "Mr. Williams, your wife's got emergency C-section. We need to get a baby distress, whatever." And instantly, and I just like, it's a case of like, that was the first time I've ever had a panic attack. Never had a panic attack ever before. Because I honestly thought my wife was going to die. I honestly thought that baby, was going to die. So it was a case of, I didn't remember much after that, I'm honest. So not really a lot.
I bet you remember the panic attack.
Yeah, I remember the panic, and it didn't last long. I think about 5 minutes.
Well, for somebody that's never experienced a panic attack, tell them. Can you convey what that feels like?
Yeah, I never had a panic attack since, if I'm honest with you. It's just I didn't know what it was. I didn't know it was a panic attack until afterwards when the Elfers there, not the Elfers, sorry, the midwife was saying you're having a panic attack, but so she gave me a bag, to blow into and take deep breaths and stuff. But it was like my whole chest like tightened up, and it was I've never really talked in depth about this really, but you feel like I felt really giddy, and I thought, oh my gosh, something's happened to me there, but I was really anxious leading up to that as well, whether that had an impact on me. But I thought, honestly, it's just I just thought my wife was going to die, and it was just horrible. It was, and but what I will say is when I do remember things. The nightmares, I was having nightmares afterwards, especially the first week or so. I remember going past the table with all the knives, and so these knives were going to cut my wife open, So I was having really like dreams that my wife actually did die as well, and even now to the point where we only got one child, the thought of my wife ever being pregnant again. You know what I mean? Seriously, if a man or not, I've had the operation, I've had the snip, so I'm pretty safe there now, I like to think. But Danny and Art, this doesn't happen to everyone. But the thought of me, if anything happened again, the wife did get pregnant, I'm sure I'd have some antenatal anxiety. Yeah, even now I think of that sometimes. I just think, oh my gosh, I didn't have that overwhelming feeling of love, and I absolutely hated it. Absolutely hated to see my wife going through all that, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, we've had 2 kids now, and we just had a little girl 10 weeks ago yesterday, and
Yeah.
honestly, it's not beautiful and romantic. It's horrendous. I mean, you know, you can't say that in a general sense. I suppose maybe some people it is, you know, it is beautiful and inspiring and but I can totally relate to the anxiety of birth. It's there's blood and there's screaming and these nurses running around and these wires and tubes going into your wife and everything. And yeah, I'm with you. There was nothing for me both times. There was nothing particularly romantic or great about it. For me, I think the best bit was that it's when the baby's out and they tell you everything's okay, and then it's finally you can settle into it. But yeah, before then it's pretty horrendous experience. It's not it's not the done thing to say that though, is it?
No, definitely not. No, honestly, you know, like you said, it's your loved one. You're watching your loved one going through a traumatic experience. You know, it's
The thing is, I mean, statistically, it's unlikely. It's unlikely, but it's not impossible. And your fear is just, you know, we're going to be that 1 in 1,000 couples or whatever that something terrible happens to. So, yeah, I can totally appreciate that.
And I think my experience wasn't as bad as some families, you know, where they witness, you know, and but to me it was absolutely horrendous for me personally.
Yeah, it's all subjective, isn't it?
Yeah.
So your little boy, Ethan.
That's right. Yeah.
So you bring Ethan home. How do things go from there? How do things? Does everything start off well? And where does it go from there? What happens next?
Yeah, my wife didn't get no sleep for about 3 days on the labour ward. That did actually go into, she'll actually say it went up to 2 weeks that she didn't get any proper sleep at all. I mean, she just couldn't sleep. I knew there was something wrong. I could see in the eyes, you know, the communication with her. She was very clingy to me. She wouldn't let me go. She had Mark stay with me, you know. But I just thought, oh, Michelle, you know, everything's fine, man. What are you worried about? Don't worry, it's fine. You know, I was so uneducated, Danny. Never seen my wife like that. My wife is a very positive person. Before that happened, and she's well and positive now. But what I'm saying is, I never seen her like that ever before. Never seen her down like that, and so I was instantly worried about her. And when the health visitor said then, put me aside, said, "Mr. Williams, your wife's got severe postnatal depression." I was like, postnatal depression? What's that all about? You know, how can she be depressed? You know, and you've got a baby, and you know, and I didn't tell her that. You know, and I was thinking, is it me she's depressed? Am I the reason? So now these doubts are coming into my mind. Then I was starting to get feeling a bit not down at that stage, Anna, but very confused. Then, you know, so I would, you know, at that time, you know, it went into 2 weeks. I didn't get back into work like planned. We were planning to go back into work because she was really ill, very ill, you know. To a point then, I was stuck in the house mostly, but if I did manage to get out, I didn't know if she was going to be really bad, you know. I couldn't get out of bed sometimes. She was a fantastic mother, even then when she was low, you know, but my wife didn't think she was ever going to be a good mother at that time. So as time went on then, loads of things happened during that time, and when she, lucky enough, we had a bit of support, but it was no postnatal depression support or anything. So she would have been put into a unit where there would have been people with schizophrenia, bipolar, away from the baby as well. I didn't want that, to be honest with you. And you know, as crazy as it sounds now, you know, all my family said, right, we're going to Spain. I mean, and as we know with depression will go with it as well, like, you know. So there was a lot of incidents that one day she will share, but what I will say is that it had a massive impact on me, you know, in seeing this wonderful woman of mine who I care so much, and now she was severely ill, and she wasn't her. It wasn't her. It definitely wasn't.
Was anything like, see, when someone that you care about is going through something like that, especially in these circumstances with having a child together, did you feel any kind of responsibility for this happening?
Yeah. Well, that's one of the reasons why I never told my wife about what I was going through later on, because I didn't want her to know. I didn't want to impact on her mental health. All I cared about was her being well. That's all I cared about. My health didn't come into it at all. If I'm honest, I did feel like a bit of a failure, really, because I wanted to protect her. I wanted to keep her well and safe, and it was times where it was out of my control, if I'm honest, as well. And
how was your relationship with Ethan? Did you bond?
Do you know, that's one of the best things that ever happened was me staying home, because my bonding and my attachment with my Ethan really grew. And because I was home for 6 months, I was very much skin to skin, and I was very much, I just done a baby sling show up in Warwick University on the weekend. And I remember having a sling in the house, a little sling, and, cushion my Ethan. And so I had all this time with Ethan as well. So that really grew. And I think a lot of research out in Denmark shows that, it should be more more leave, for the father as well, because I think it's a really good investment. I think one good thing of being home for that 6 months, that I had a really good bond attachment. So, he's absolutely amazing. We like chalk and cheese now. Yeah, but I think it did help, because I certainly didn't get that overwhelming feeling of love for my son during our birth. I didn't at that time.
So what happened with, so we understand Michelle's going through something, and, it sounds that from your perspective that even though you were bonding with Ethan, things are going well in that sense with your relationship with him. And I guess kind of what I'm fishing for here is what contributed to my problems after I had my first little boy was I didn't bond very well with him, and I really struggled to be a father. I was very disinterested. It didn't do it for me. I suppose I've got a very kind of the traditional male. I fulfill the traditional male role, if you like, where I just I chip in, but in that first year, I'm not. It doesn't do anything for me. I mean, I love them to death. I'd give my life for them without question, but I don't find it very engaging. If I'm being honest. But it doesn't sound like that was your experience. So I'm wondering what it was that kind of tipped you over from maybe just feelings of pressure and the stress and the guilt of Michelle's situation. What pushed you into your own negative spiral that eventually became postnatal depression for you?
Yeah, like you said, I thought I was going to be a failure as a father.
But sorry, let me stop you immediately there.
That's okay.
Why did you feel that?
I think maybe it was partly because I felt like I should keep them both safe. I think because it didn't go to plan, perhaps I had this idea of it's going to be a lovely birth, and we're going to get back on our lives, and we're going to, with the pram, both all three of us together, and then I was starting to doubt myself. Am I good enough myself? Whether that come from my low self-esteem, am I good enough? And I was starting to doubt myself again. When you're in a situation, you 24/7, it's like a cooker. It's like a pressure cooker. So I'm there 24/7. Couldn't even tell my friends about postnatal depression or depression because, you're worried about social services. You're worried about all this thing because I was so uneducated about mental health. I didn't know anyone who had actually gone through depression. Nobody had ever told me about depression. This is 2004. I was always this person. Oh, how can anyone get depressed? I was one of those people. I'm from the valleys, mining community, tough men, underground, rugby, drinking, all this, kickboxing. I was actually, my physical health was absolutely incredible up to that point. My physical, I just won a Welsh over 35s kickboxing championship.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so my physical health, but my mental health, I think it was a couple of reasons. It was that I think it was something to do with that trauma in the birth, which something's happened there. I think it was the impact looking after my wife's illness, looking after somebody I loved. I think the financial reasons were coming in then as well. So I didn't know when she was going to be well. So you go from earning X amount, and then you're using your credit card, and then you're paying this, and then you're not earning no money coming in. And then as a man, you want to provide as a father. You want to go to work and earn that money, because I've always been told my father said, look, you got to work, you got to provide your family. He's been taught that of his father. So I think partly I was failing as a father because I thought I should be providing for my family. So all these thoughts were going through my mind now. I couldn't get back into work at all. I tried to get back, but I ended up drinking. I was drinking so much during this time. It got so bad that my mother-in-law came to live with us, which I'm still getting counselling for now.
I'm not editing that bit out.
Yeah. I always tell you that. But I was lucky. I was lucky that I had a lot of family support. But if you ask my friends now, and it's so interesting, my personality totally changed during this time. Totally changed. They thought I was a right idiot. I punched in the sofa and busted my hand. I fighting with bouncers. Not because I wanted to. I just wanted somebody to hit me. You know what I mean? I just wanted somebody to hit me and to take away this agonizing feeling. What I know now, I was going through depression, and that's when the suicidal thoughts were coming in. Then more and more. Never made a plan to kill myself. Just thought I just wasn't good. And I thought it'd be better off without me at that stage as well.
How long did that? You reached that period. That's I think that's classed as rock bottom. How long did that period last for you?
I think it's horrible to say. I think the drinking actually helped me get through it. I think as mad as it say, but I think it went on. I think that if it weren't for the drinking, actually, my wife's illness took about 18 months to fully. It was you could see because what happened was she'd get well and there'd be medication change, and then it'll be a massive dip. Then she'd be well again. So I didn't know when she was going to get better either. So if it was like a broken leg and somebody said, look, in 2 years' time, your wife is going to be 100% better, at least I could prepare mentally for that. But I didn't know when she was going to get better. So every month it was we're back now. Okay. And then, so my emotions were up and down constantly. And I thought at some point it was never going to be better. And you start, thinking, is this my life now? Is this, so I think it was, it went on. And even afterwards, what happened was, Danny, was interesting was, and my wife will tell you this now, is that I was changing jobs constantly all the time. I mean, changing jobs constantly. I was, I must have had, I don't know how many jobs, sales jobs up to that point. But what happened was, I had a lot of trauma in my life in 2010. I got a very close family. So I lost my grandfather with dementia, and my mother had cancer within the space of 6 weeks together.
Wow.
And because I hadn't dealt with all the stuff that I dealt with in the past, it was like it just all come overflowing. I was having those thoughts again about the birth trauma and other stuff as well, during that time, which I never experienced for years. So I was so stressed. I would pretend to go work, and I would park my car up and then go for walks in the woods. And then the suicidal thoughts started to come back. I was thinking, which way to do it and different things. I was so, what I know now, so ill at that time. And I think around that time, it was around 2011, around that time, I was the biggest liar you can imagine. I'd lie. I was drinking more again. And I remember going to work. And I said goodbye to my wife, and parked up in the car and ready going to work. And it's just like I just couldn't get out of my car. I couldn't get out of the car. I was just, my body just shut down. And I was the first time I thought, oh my gosh, I mean, I really panicked. It got the point where,
Sorry, Mark. So I'm guessing the episode you're referring to here is the point at which you feel you had this breakdown.
yeah.
What was the content of the thoughts? I mean, I know from experience it can be very, very scatty and all over the place.
Yeah.
But what were the main things that were bearing down on you at that time?
I couldn't stop my mind from racing. It was like my mind's racing anyway. I've always had a racing mind, constant ideas, got to write things down, lose things, and all. I know all about that. But when you got the depression as well, it was a case I just couldn't stop my mind from. I was cracking up. I couldn't stop it. I couldn't stop it. It got the point then that I was like doing things like this, and shake my hand. And funny enough, I go back in the post-natal period. My mother-in-law actually witnessed me rocking back and forth in a chair, It got the point where I didn't care about anyone anymore. I didn't care what anyone thought. I didn't care anyone. And to a point, the only thing I honestly say, my son actually really kept me alive. You never know in hindsight if I would go on to take my life. But I honestly thought I was better off. They were better off. And I think just being alive for my son, it got to the point where I was in my car and said, Mark, as long as you're here with Ethan, if Michelle leaves you, it doesn't matter. You've got to be here for your son.
Well, that's what that's what, as long as you're comfortable talking about it, that's something I'm very much interested in. I'm interested in the dynamic of your relationship with Michelle and how things changed, because I did an episode a few weeks ago talking about the experience of carers looking after somebody with mental health issues. And one of the more kind of profound points that came up was carers are, more often than not, it's a mother caring for a child. And the thing about that relationship is even though it's more intense, that's the natural order of that relationship in the first place. The mother was the carer for the child anyway, before the mental illness came along. Whereas with, between a man and a woman, or between any couple that's in a sexual relationship, the dynamic isn't one of one person looking after the other, of caring for the other. It's almost that's almost the antithesis of what a romantic relationship is. So I'm just wondering how, firstly, from both perspectives, how did caring for Michelle, how did that affect you and your perspective on the relationship? But then also as well, how did your behaviour later on affect the relationship as well?
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because what happened, I went from a living role, and then you go into a caring role. And what happened, Danny, was after my breakdown, now my wife was looking after me.
So sorry, so just to get the chronology right, Michelle had recovered in the meantime, is that correct?
Yeah, recovered. She was back in work, great, everything's happy. And then when I had my breakdown then, now Michelle was looking after me, and her depression came back even worse this time. Really bad. So now, because she was worried about me now, so she went to live with her mother during this time, the second time up in Bristol. So I'm really talking about, funny enough, this as well. So
were you guys like arguing a lot? Did you ever get to the point where you were talking about ending the relationship?
Oh, I remember running away during the post-natal period. I remember sitting in a bar in Swansea. It had just been a bloody casino, and I was trying to get back into work and my working clothes on, and I was ready to just run away. Like, I was ready to run away before I had the breakdown as well. I'll be honest with you, because I think when you're talking to somebody, like, I come home, the conversation has totally changed, and so when I'd have this normal, have a laugh with a joke with her, I didn't have that Michelle anymore. But our relationship, oh yeah, definitely. But now it's made us stronger. Obviously now it's been 20 years this year now.
I've got to say, when people are talking about these kind of diagnoses and things like postnatal depression or anxiety, I think people can almost sometimes maybe conceptualize it as this thing that kind of happened to you, which of course it can, you know, the circumstances that around you can shape those things. But how much of the responsibility do you feel you have to bear for getting into that downward spiral?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't know what I didn't know what depression was. I thought, oh yeah, tomorrow will be better. You know, it'll go away, and go away, and it's just getting worse and worse and worse. But especially that first year when I had that, after my mother had cancer, my grandfather I lost. I never experienced those two episodes like ever before. I think I was, after the postnatal period, I was depressed. But it was a really turning point after that. You know, I would come home. Oh, even Michelle would say now, you know, I didn't know what mood you was going to be in when you come home from work. You know, and I was put it down to my job. Oh, I hate my job. I don't know. I want to move away, and all these, you know, behaviors. But really, I was depressed. You know, with taking responsibility, I just didn't know. I didn't know what depression looked like. I was too uneducated about it. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what it looked like, you know. And I was worried about going to the GP because I didn't want it affected my work. I didn't want it on my medical records, you know. I haven't told anyone about any moods, or only person who knew about my moods would be Michelle. So I'm a very smiley person when I go out. So when I go out, everyone, I didn't say, oh, I'm suffering. I would put this mask on. So the only person that I've ever seen me, apart from my mother-in-law, see me rocking back and forth, was Michelle. So I once I'm in the house, I would act differently to my house. So when I'm out, I didn't want anyone to know I was suffering.
Why?
I think because I've been brought up as people in my community. You got to be the man. You can't show weakness. You got to keep fighting and I think that's the reason where it got to the point where I just couldn't keep it in anymore. And that's when that day just all coming out. I just started crying. I was just in my head. I was just totally melting down. Like, you know, I just couldn't get out the car at one stage. You know, I didn't know if I could drive back. You know, I was about 30 miles away. I didn't know what was going on with me. My mind had just totally just shut. It was just like racing so fast, so much. I just couldn't control anymore, you know. And it was when I picked up a phone and I just said, look, I don't know what's happened to me. I'm really scared. And
who did you speak to?
I spoke to an organisation my wife works for now, Mental Health Matters Wales. And I explained, and he said, look, can you get the GP? I said, look, at this precise moment, I can't get the GP. I can't drive home, I don't think. So when you're ready, if you can't, you know, they explained the situation and said, whatever you do, go to your GP straight away. But just a couple of hours before, I remember dropping Michelle off, and I was just like, I was never been that emotional ever. I've never been that emotional. You know, I was just like crying, and I was shaking, everything. I was just, yeah, but the reason why I think I went to GP, and I always remember this, is I didn't care what anyone thought anymore. I'd lost that. In my mind, I was like, if I don't get this help, I'm not going to be here for my son. And that was the first thing. And I've never, you know, I like to get on with everyone. And even today now, I don't care what anyone thinks now. And that's why I've been talking all about it for 6 years. You know, I've been talking about my depression, anxiety, whatever it is. Because for years, I worried what other people thought of me. And I realise now, if I could have stopped that from actually happening, if I got the help during the time when my personality changed, during when I was really angry during the postnatal years. So yeah.
Okay, so the only way from here is up. And so I guess I've got two questions. So what did you start to do? What did the upward spiral consist of in a very practical sense? But then also, at what point did you realise that you were getting better?
Yeah. Well, I was in bed, when I did get the help, went to GP, I just couldn't get out of bed. Obviously, it took me a while. The medication started kicking in, if I'm honest with you. And medication doesn't work for everyone. It worked for me, and I mean that. And same as therapy, I think what works, I'm very much a person-centered approach. What works for me might not work for you. But medication did work for me. So it got me to a level where I could concentrate more. So then I got the counselling involved then. I had a fantastic counsellor. Her name was Sarah, a fantastic counsellor. Really had a good rapport with her. Fantastic rapport. She would show me things, and that's what I will say with men as well. Sometimes it's find that right counsellor, right rapport, because fathers said, counselling don't work. It's sometimes finding out what works for you, and then I found out about mindfulness, all this positive coping skills. But what really was a turning point, it was around about, I must have been 6-7 weeks into it. I was fully recovered. Well, not fully recovered. What's the word? I was fully back into the gym, I should say. So I was really into the gym, getting back healthy eating. So it really built up that time. And I was in the gym one day, and this guy next to me, Brian, I didn't know who he was. And I said, can I borrow the weights there, mate? And he said, yeah, no worries. He said, I got to go to NHS Prams now. And I said, what's NHS Prams? Oh, my wife's got postnatal depression. And I said, no way, I said, my wife had postnatal depression too. He said, Mark, he said, I've lost my business, my house. I've had a breakdown myself. And I said to him, Brian, NHS Prams, I said, well, I found out the lady who ran NHS Prams was the lady who was helping us years later, who asked Michelle actually to do antenatal classes when she's well, So that was... sometimes I think it's just meant to be in it. So I said, Brian, did anyone ask you how you were feeling? He said, no, nobody asked. And what I found with Brian, obviously he had a lot of trauma happen to him years ago. And he don't mind me saying he witnessed his father hanging. He did actually, and kept that contained in his box for years. But when his wife had the postnatal depression now, what happened was it just come out. It just, he hadn't dealt with all that and it came out. And so I went home, Googled it, and there was nothing for fathers, nothing for looking after wives with postnatal depression. And what happened with Danny was my support group, because bear in mind, I was in the youth sector, in the voluntary sector. I knew how to set up groups, and so I made sure it was safeguarding in place. I had a voluntary counsellor, and it was only for once a month. And at the time, only supporting the partners with postnatal depression. What I was finding after talking to dads, that they were suffering from birth trauma. They were suffering from anxiety, OCD. I mean, we don't even talk about fathers. During this time, they get the impulsive thoughts that they're going to do something to the baby. They were actually suffering postnatal depression, different postnatal depression to mine. So it was just, and I was lucky, really lucky to meet Dr. Jane Hanley, who wrote the book on perinatal mental health. In fact, who I'm actually doing a bit of training with tomorrow, and she mentored me. So I got the more of a clinical outlook of perinatal mental health, it's called now. And, it just went from there then. Obviously, I told my story. Now, I never told my story as postnatally depressed. I was just saying that I was depressed, so I was very much, I didn't know about postnatal depression then. But it just went crazy. And then obviously in the first year, I was in the Pride of Britain Awards and ITV, BBC, and then and it's just grown from there, really, And I've been lucky enough to, it's changed my life from a negative time of life into a positive,
So is this referring to now? On your, I think your Huffington and Post profile, it mentions Dads Matter UK. Fathers reaching out, and then reaching out perinatal mental health. So, what are these organisations? Are they all different? Do they deal with different things? And what is it you guys do? And what services, information do you provide that are worthwhile for people to reach out to you for?
Yeah. What it was, Danny, I set up a charity. It was a charity. We had a bit of funding here and there. So fathers reaching out was going to be a charity. Well, what happened was the demand just took over. People wanted me to set up projects up in London, Birmingham, all over. And I'm very cautious about safeguarding. You know, I couldn't just say to somebody, because I'll be honest with you, even during that first year, I was still unwell, if I'm honest with you. You know, I was still taking on a lot of problems, these guys, and I hadn't really fully recovered myself. It helped mine. I'll be honest with you, it absolutely helped. When I was in the support groups, I was offloading and all that, you know. But looking after, you know, people who were severely ill and had other mental illnesses before that, you know. So it just got too much. And I think 2013, 14 it was, I got another organisation involved, and unfortunately it went over, but then it didn't work out with this national charity. I dissolved my charity, and unfortunately, and went up and set up another charity with another gentleman. Unfortunately, I'm not business minded, if I'm honest with you, and that was going well until when it comes to business side, if I'm honest with you, I'm absolutely terrible, you know, and I am not that. So I've gone down the campaigning route, trying to change the guidelines. There's no mention of fathers on the CG 192 NICE guidelines, no mention of word fathers. So we're in Westminster. So I've recently just gone back as far as reaching out, but we're mostly doing like podcasts like yourself, resources. I got International Fathers Mental Health Day, like I mentioned early on. I just, unfortunately, I am, because it's still new. It's still a new area when fathers' mental health. It's still really new. So I think now it's only now starting to change. They're starting to realise we've got to include the father in services now as well. So, you know, I'm not one to mourn. I think I'm not bitter what's happened to me in the past. I just move on. You know, you got to. I think it teaches you one thing in life when you get depression, that, you know, at least I'm not there. I mean, you can check anything at me now. I don't care. At least I'm not there when I was, and I just want to grow now in whatever area it is, you know.
Okay. Before we begin wrapping things up, a couple of things really. One is, well, where is Mark now? Up here, and how are things family wise?
Yeah.
Are we totally back on track? Is Mark in a good place, a happy place? Are you? Yeah, is this a continual battle, or is it something you've left behind?
I think when I was put on amoxicillin. I was put on amoxicillin, which is an ADHD medication. So I had to come off citalopram, and the crossover was absolutely horrendous. To be honest with you, it was that's another topic in itself. Coming off medication onto another. I found amoxicillin which is an ADHD medication. It worked mentally, but I didn't have this like drive anymore. Very much. I was looking at my diary, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't do all that anymore. And it was something that made me a bit. It was me, and my wife picked up on it, you know, as well. So I've come off all medication. I use exercise, healthy eating more. I'll always be looking after my mental health. Even now, when I get too many phone calls or it gets overwhelming, I think, hang on, Mark, you can't do all that. Can't impossibly do all that. I don't crave it as much as I used to, getting the awareness out, either like I did in the first year. I was like, I've got to get this out now. I think more people are getting on board as well, and I've been helping other fathers share their story now as well. So I think I've come to a bit of peace of mind now. Actually, I think that I like to think I've done a bit of an impact on helping fathers, not just in the UK, around the world, and whatever I do now. I think, yeah, I'm at peace with myself now, Danny. You know, and my family, my boy's absolutely thriving. You know, we do so much together as a family. You know, like I mentioned, you know, I'm in the youth sector still. I cut back on my coaching now as well, the football. You know, I got other people involved. So I'm very conscious about not doing too much now as well.
Yeah.
That's the main thing, you know.
So what would...
Financially, it's not, my Danny. I'll be honest, it's cost me a fortune. Like, my wife is a real hero, honestly, because, you know, I'm doing training tomorrow and all that. I love all that stuff. But you know, I want to be home. So I'm working on a dementia project with the NHS now, complex needs, and which I absolutely love. That's a new area again. I love it. It's not my passion. I love fathers' work. But, you know, I can get home at night. I got a regular wage, you know, and, you know, yeah, you know, I do a bit of everything, you know, so which is great, you know.
If you were going to give, say we've got a dad listening who feels like he's going through something similar, what would the main pieces of advice be to that person?
Yeah. Do you know, I always tell people that is the quicker you do get the help, honestly, the quicker the recovery will be. Because looking back, I think the first year it's only an insight that, I was just worried whatever people thought. Don't worry whatever people think. Your scenario is when you go on an aeroplane and you got the baby next to you, you put on the oxygen mask on first yourself. Because how can you look after your child if you can't look after yourself first? So we got to get in this approach. We got to look after ourselves first, because how can we help anyone else? So please, if there's any fathers out there, just honestly, just go and get the help. There's resources out there for fathers. Like you said, it's a new area. We're trying to push. Things are developing. There's a lot of good organisations out there now that are starting to look at fathers as well. So yeah, it's all going forward.
Would you care to name some of those? Do a bit of name dropping. Be shameless.
Certain areas like Bristol is Dads in Mind, new organisation coming up. We set up an organisation in Wales called Dads Cymru and back another charity called PMH Cymru. Other organisations, like you said, you've got the Fathers Institute, you've got information. It's mostly information, but like you said earlier on, it's really far between it is, unfortunately. Only now we talk about women's mental health. And there's a lot of good resources on like the NCT, Maternal Mental Health Alliance, 1001 Critical Days are really getting involved now as well. So it's all coming forward, and obviously Mind, they do they got a lot of resource pages. But when it comes to support groups, there's support groups in football. Like a friend of mine does Mental Health Football UK. State of Mind is another organisation which we use rugby league. So it doesn't have to be about dads groups. It's a lot of good, like Dads Rock in Scotland. They do support groups. It doesn't have to be about postnatal depression. Just get involved with any men's mental health organisation.
Yes. Start talking to people.
Absolutely. Start talking. That's what it's all about, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'll make sure I'll scour Google and try and get some together, and I'll include all them in the show notes. Right, Mark, before I let you go, I'm going to subject you to... have you listened to any of the episodes of the podcast before?
No, I haven't, to be honest.
Right, okay, so I like to, after we've been talking about mental health and all that, I like to kind of lift the mood a little bit towards the end with some more relaxed, broad philosophical questions. But before we get into those ones, the first one is, have you got any book recommendations on this topic or anything else that you feel would be of value to the listeners?
Yeah, it's Mark Harris has got a good book. He's a midwife, he is, and it's... I'm not sure. It's Mark Harris's book. I have got it around here somewhere. Sorry. Right. So Mark Harris got a good book. Dr. Jane Hanley, I got to plug her because she's my mentor. Perinatal mental health. That's for professionals, and also gives you an insight of the illness if the father's looking after the partners. I think Elaine Anzac's got a good book about her experience. I've got a book coming out at the end of the year as well. I got to plug her.
What's that going to be called? Have we got a title in mind?
I got a couple of... I'm still... A Father Reaching Out comes to mind. A Father Reaching Out.
Okay. Well, if you're listening to this podcast in like a year or two, look on the show notes and the link will be in there, whatever the book's going to be called. If you could take the reins of power at the Department of Health, what policy would you implement to improve the mental well-being of the general public?
I think it's got to be taught in schools. I think we've got to put it in education early years. Coming from a youth background, from a town called Bridgend, we had a lot of suicides in Bridgend years ago, and it really affected our community. So it's got to be in schools. I think, as a personal note, I'm trying to campaign, get the word fathers on the CG 192 NICE guidelines. So we need that in place. And I think we've got to be talking about mental health with physical health. So we talk about the 5 a day, the early prevention. Why aren't we talking about it like, if we haven't got it, how are we going to stop it? So it's about, I'm doing a new project at the moment where, we talk about how to prevent cancer and other illnesses. Why aren't we talking about it? Actually, if we how to prevent it in the first place anyway. And so at least if we never get, at least if we know somebody has it, we can understand it more. I think it's just so much lack of education around mental health in general. So I like to see more posters and awareness and out there in gyms and everywhere, really.
Okay. What, if anything, keeps you up at night?
Do you know, I'm a really good sleeper, I am, Danny. I'll be honest, when I was going through it, I wasn't that. But that's another thing, part of it. But no, do you know, I'm really at peace with myself now. I really am with everything. I think everything, I look after myself sleep-wise. I look at everything. I don't analyse myself too much, but the only thing I worry about, if anything, and my only goal left now is to do this full time, work for myself full time. That's my only goal, if I'm honest with you now, is provide my family and also do what I love. I just love it. I do it for free. Well, I've done it for free, but I think that's my ultimate goal now.
What's the best piece of life advice anyone's ever given you?
It's got to be Mr. Stan Norris, MBE, and he said, Mark, there's two pieces of advice I'll give you. He said, don't let anyone tell you can't do anything. And he said, unfortunately, we're from a place where if somebody gives you an apple, we can't eat it. You'll have to raffle it. So what he said is, and I realize that now. It's just, people say, oh, Mark, you should be doing it, this and this. It is what it is. You know what I mean? And yeah, I've learned so much off him, to be honest with you.
What mistakes do you continue to make despite knowing better?
I'm always making mistakes. I think every time I do talks, I'm listening to other people. I think, oh my gosh, I said that, and really, that's really given me a different insight of mental health as well. So when I look back at my posts from 2012, 13, 14, whatever, I'm getting more educated now. I mean, more and more and more, and I don't know it all. I do not know it all because mental health is so complex. What I'm going through is totally different to the other person. But what I have learned is that I'm more of a person-centered approach. I find out what I can do to help them. So whereas before I would say, oh, well, this happened to me, this. And I got a different approach now. So I think I'm learning all the time. Definitely learning all the time.
Okay, final three. What part of your life or career are you most proud of?
I think away from mental health, I think the youth work I've done, from having 4 players in my valley, football players, now we got over 100 players, families coming together in football, and I've trained British champions in pool and table tennis. That side, I think one of the proudest things, obviously, is seeing my son grow up where he is, and my wife and my family. I got a really good family, strong. Being awarded like local hero, Pride Britain, and Inspiration Father of the Year has been great for awareness. It's been great, but the experience from it has, taking my wife and my mother to the Mind Media Awards, and then taking her down a little red carpet, and she's seen all the soap stars, see my mother's face. That was absolutely amazing for me, So I think those are the highlights. I like to, I think I know my mother and father are proud of me, and that's one thing, yeah.
Outside of family and career, and this includes mental health activism, so outside of those areas, what investment of time or money has brought you the most joy or fulfillment?
Do you know what? The best thing that ever happened to me, and it was like in 2014, I couldn't go. I was asked to go to Marseille Society. That's all the top professors and doctors around the world speaking, and it was in Swansea, a local area. Jane was the president then, and I didn't think I was good enough, and I went to Melbourne last year, and I got the opportunity to speak again, and knowing the fact that I didn't have no education at 15. And speaking alongside professors and doctors from around the world, I was the only one from the UK talking to my father's mental health. I came out that room and I thought, oh my gosh, what I mean? I think back to that teacher when he said to me, Williams, you'll never be good enough. And I remember that. I think that's the biggest self-joy I've had, thinking, I am good enough. I am good enough.
Well, I think you cheated a little bit there because it kind of included mental health, but I liked the answer, so I'm going to let you get away with it. Here's the final one, the big one. What do you think is the key to happiness?
Certainly not money. If I'm honest with you, I think a lot of people drive for money first. And I think it's being in a job that you absolutely love. And I absolutely love my life at the moment, better than when I was earning a lot of money. I've never been materialistic, to be honest with you. That's one of the reasons we have those pressures. But I just do something where you really love and enjoy. And that will be massive for you, I think. And my wife, me and my wife, actually love our jobs now. We get up in the morning and we absolutely love going to work, and we know we're helping people. So that's the ultimate for me. Okay,
Mark Williams, thank you very much. Is there any links you'd like to direct the listeners to? Are you on social media? Feel free to plug away.
Yeah, you can see me at www.reachingoutpmh. Website's still under ongoing thing, but you can see me on Twitter, Mark Williams, FMH. If you just Google Mark Williams Fathers Reaching Out, you'll see a couple of bit of media on me, and so please get into contact. And if you're looking for me to do any talks or workshops after April, especially next year, I'd be more than happy.
Okay, Mark, I appreciate you taking the time. It was great to hear your story.
Thank you, Danny.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Okay, folks, if you enjoyed this episode and you've got a couple of minutes to spare, then maybe you'd consider leaving us a positive review on iTunes or Stitcher or whichever podcast service you happen to use. That would be greatly appreciated. It also encourages other people to give us a listen. If you can't spare a couple of minutes, but you've got a couple of seconds, maybe you could share one of our episodes with your family or friends on social media. Don't forget you can comment on any of these episodes by going to myownworstenemy.org/podcast. And if you'd like to contact me, you can email me at danny@myownworstenemy.org. Or if email's a bit old-fashioned for you, then you can get hold of me on all the different social media channels at Danny D. Whitaker. And that's about that. I'll see you again next time.